Apparently, in Westminster these days, comparing rape sentences to jail time for offensive tweets is seen as a perfectly rational exercise. What could possibly go wrong? Welcome back to Alert View, where British politics makes about as much sense as a chocolate teapot. Today, we delve into the unfolding fiasco surrounding Attorney General Lord Richard Hermer, a man who has somehow managed to unite Conservative voices in a chorus calling for his resignation faster than you can say, unduly lenient sentencing scheme. But before we get too deep, let me paint you a picture that'll leave your head spinning faster than a government U-turn. Enter Chris Philp, yes, that Chris Philp, the shadow Home Secretary, who one imagines spends his evenings rehearsing stern expressions in the mirror. He stood up in Parliament yesterday, visibly seething, railing against what he dubbed two-tier justice. The statistics he cited were enough to send eyebrows across the House skyward. Here's where it starts to feel surreal. A man convicted of rape was handed a sentence of just 28 months. Meanwhile, Lucy Connolly, who posted vile and inflammatory remarks on Twitter following the Southport attack, including a call to set fire to the hotel full of bastards, received a 31-month prison sentence. Yes, you read that correctly. Connolly received 3 months more than a convicted rapist. Now, I'm no mathematician, but when a social media post results in a harsher sentence than a sexual assault, something has gone gravely wrong with the justice system. Chris Philp articulated what many are thinking: why does Lord Hermer appear to treat rape as less serious than hate speech on Twitter? Let's be clear, inciting violence is, without question, a grave offence. But when punishments no longer seem proportionate to the crimes, one begins to wonder whether someone at the Ministry of Justice has been playing judicial Jenga while blindfolded. And it gets worse. Lord Hermer is having what can only be described as a catastrophic month. He recently made a speech in which he likened calls to leave international courts to the rhetoric of 1930s Germany because, it seems, every political disagreement now ends in a Hitler comparison. Predictably, his spokesman was forced to backtrack, conceding that the remarks were regrettable and his choice of language, clumsy. Clumsy? That's a bit like calling the Titanic a minor navigational misstep. To top it all off, the Conservative leader has now demanded that Starmer sack Lord Hermer, accusing him of believing in the rule of lawyers, not the rule of law, a surprisingly witty turn of phrase for the Tories, one must admit. But the crux of the issue remains this: under the unduly lenient sentencing scheme, a legal mechanism which allows the Attorney General to refer questionable sentences for review, Lord Hermer had the authority to challenge that 28-month sentence for rape. He chose not to. Meanwhile, Lucy Connolly has received the full weight of the law for her abhorrent tweets. The optics? Disastrous. Labour, understandably, has mounted a fierce counterattack. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper came out swinging like it was last orders at a rowdy pub. She hit back with a withering response: "How dare you talk about crime when you were the ones in charge as it all went to pot?" And, to be fair, she's not wrong. Under the previous Conservative government, charge rates for rape plummeted with the speed of Boris Johnson's polling numbers. Cooper is playing the legacy card hard, pointing to the Tories' appalling record on crime, immigration, and pretty much everything else. The whole scene resembles squabbling divorced parents arguing over who broke the children, except the children in this case are British justice, and they are well and truly broken. Yet British politics wouldn't be complete without a touch of pantomime. When Sir Julian Lewis pointed out that Cooper hadn't actually answered the question about Lord Hermer's failure to act, she pulled an old classic: "Oh, he doesn't actually decide sentencing, that's not how the system works." Technically correct. But it neatly skirts the far more important point, that he could have referred the sentence for review, and opted not to. And just when you think this entire saga couldn't get any more uncomfortable, along comes Sir Keir Starmer, defending Lucy Connolly's prison term. He reaffirmed his commitment to free speech, while also denouncing incitement to violence, a stance that sounds perfectly reasonable, until you remember that the person in question received more time than a rapist. Hollowing out? What about the NHS? What about the millions of Britons unable to get a GP appointment or access basic care? And here's the real scandal: the same government that claims we can't afford to lift the two-child benefit cap, or house our homeless veterans, somehow has billions sitting around for new weapons and upgraded barracks. Apparently, Modern accommodation for soldiers is more pressing than fixing collapsing maternity wards or underfunded A&E departments. So what was Nigel Farage's response? One word: enough. Reform UK has drawn a clear line in the sand. Farage is demanding that the entire £6 billion defence budget be frozen immediately. Not reallocated gradually. Not trimmed over a decade. Frozen now. Because, in his words, Britain's greatest threat isn't coming from Moscow, it's coming across the English Channel. Illegal migration is out of control. Over 50,000 people crossed the Channel last year alone. Meanwhile, billions are being spent housing, feeding, and accommodating these arrivals, while British families queue at food banks and hospitals buckle under pressure. Labour, predictably, went into full-blown panic. Starmer, rattled by Reform's sudden rise in the polls and terrified of appearing weak, has been scrambling behind the scenes. Sources close to Labour insiders claim Starmer is holding late-night emergency strategy sessions to stop Farage's momentum, especially now that Reform UK is overtaking Labour in key northern seats. But here's the reality: the public's no longer falling for the scaremongering. When Reform UK says, freeze the defence budget and fix the NHS, voters listen. When Farage says, stop throwing billions at foreign wars and start looking after the British people, he gets applause, not outrage. Let's talk numbers. According to military insiders, Britain manufactures fewer shells in a year than Russia expends in a single day. So this fantasy that we're somehow going to deter Putin with a £6 billion injection into the Ministry of Defence isn't just naive, it's laughable. Reform UK is calling it out for what it is, a cynical distraction. Meanwhile, Labour and the Conservatives are reading from the same tired script: we must be prepared for war. But what war, Keir? While crime soars, schools crumble, and patients die waiting for ambulances, what war is it you're preparing for? Even Starmer's own Defence Secretary admitted that the funding isn't arriving quickly enough to meet the military's needs. So why this sudden urgency? Why the rush to throw another £6 billion into a black hole? Simple. Because Labour is rattled. Farage has seized the narrative. He's reframed the debate, not around militarism or geopolitics, but around priorities. He's asked the questions that the establishment refuses to answer. If we have the money to build missile factories, why don't we have the money to build GP surgeries? If we can upgrade army barracks in a heartbeat, why are more and more families relying on food banks? The truth is, Farage is speaking to the growing majority who feel abandoned, who are tired of being told there's no money for them, only to watch billions vanish into defence budgets and foreign commitments. This is a political reckoning. Reform UK is forcing a national conversation that the mainstream parties want to bury. A conversation about putting Britain first. About fixing public services before funding foreign adventurism. About securing our borders before playing war games abroad. And it's working. Polls now show that more and more voters agree: freeze the defence budget, fund the NHS, and stop the boats. As Labour descends into crisis, meeting in secret, flailing in panic, one thing has become crystal clear. Reform UK has detonated a political bomb, and Keir Starmer has been caught in the blast. For more truth bombs they'd rather you didn't hear, subscribe to Alert View. Because this isn't just a fight for political power. It's a fight for the soul of Britain.